So hello everyone, and welcome to the 10th session now in our Accessibility Insights series, where AbilityNet's Head of Digital Inclusion, Robin Christopherson, hosts a monthly online chat with individuals who are each working to improve digital accessibility and digital inclusion. And this month, he's chatting to Emma Pratt-Richens, who is Senior Research Engineer, Accessibility Specialist at the BBC. I'm Annie Mannion, and I'm Digital Communications Manager at AbilityNet, and I'll be running you through today's session. So just to go through a few bits of housekeeping, we have live captions provided today by My Clear Text, and you can turn the captions on using the CC option on the control panel. Additional captions are available via streamtext.net/player?event equals AbilityNet. And slides are available at slideshare.net/AbilityNet and also on our website at abilitynet.org.uk/insights-BBC. And if you have any technical issues and you need to leave early, don't worry, you'll receive an email in a couple of days' time with the recording, the transcripts and the slides. And then depending on how you joined the webinar, you'll find a Q&A window. If you want to ask Emma or Robin any questions, do drop those into the Q&A area for them to address. And they'll do that after today's session in a follow-up blog on our website, and that's at /insights-BBC. And then we also have a feedback survey that you'll be directed to at the end, which invites you to tell us about any future topics you'd like us to cover in our webinars. So that's all from me, and now over to Robin and Emma.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Annie. Hi, Emma.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us. Really, really appreciate it. The BBC have been so active in the area of accessibility over the years. So it was brilliant that we've got you on. And you've been with the Beeb for quite a while now. Does that sound impolite?
No, hopefully that. I have over 15 years now. Not always in accessibility, but yeah.
Yep. I had over the weekend lots of people congratulating me on LinkedIn for my 25th anniversary with AbilityNet, and I didn't even realise, but yeah. So yeah, time flies when you're having fun.
It does. It does.
Brilliant. So we always start off with the same question. What beverage have you got that will help you get through this ordeal? I've got just a cup of tea here, nice hot cup of tea.
Well, I've opted for a Tigger mug, little nod to my outgoing boss, and I have a hot cordial. I don't drink tea and coffee, but I went for hot cordial. So.
Very wise. And that would be Gareth, would it?
Indeed. Tigger. Yep. You want to do that. Have to do it in front of me.
Anyone who knows Gareth, Ford Williams, I think will appreciate that kind of, yeah.
Yeah, he did a great talk all about Tigger. his ADHD alter ego.
Brilliant. Okay, great. So again, another question that I usually open with, which is about how much accessibility has changed, if it has, in your opinion. Say over the last 10 years, what do you think are the main changes that you've seen? I know you haven't been in an accessibility role for all that time, so maybe in the last 4 years, but you know, things are changing all the time.
Like I said, I've been at the BBC about 15 years. I actually started off as a web developer, a front-end web developer. So very much dealing with what the user interacts with. And I had been in a development role for probably 5 or 6 years, even before that. So I've been in the industry a long time. And I actually came from a council. So I worked at a government council when the laws came in around the government councils being accessible and making sure their websites were accessible. I was working on a council website at the time. So I actually brought my interest in accessibility with me to the BBC. And that was one of the things I think helped me to get the job, that I had an interest in that because it was something that they were thinking about. I think that is one of the things that has definitely changed. But when I joined the BBC, it was very much the remit of the front-end developers. You know, nobody else was really thinking about it. And I met Gareth way back then, because he was the person coming in and asking the questions about that kind of stuff. But it was very much kind of in that kind of front end arena was where that was getting talked about. I specialized into accessibility about 6 years ago. 7 years ago, something like that. And having worked in BBC Children's for quite a long time, where accessibility really matters, because children have a whole bunch of kind of different accessibility needs from adults. And so you do have to really think about it, because some of our audience don't read particularly well yet. They're still learning how to understand the interfaces, but they're not scared to explore. So those were things that we could kind of be very mindful of in the interfaces that we developed for them. So I brought all of that with me as I specialized into accessibility 6-7 years ago. And I've definitely seen it change from that kind of very much the concern of the people who were building that front end. These days, it's a concern of a whole team. So right from the people who are creating the requirements, to the designers, to the developers, right through to the people who are testing, even through into the editorial teams who are adding in the content and the things that they're thinking about. So I've seen that change happen in the time that I've been at the BBC. And it's a really positive change, because it means accessibility gets thought about much, much earlier, instead of being retrofit after something is built.
Absolutely, and that culture shift is key, isn't it? Because you have to think about it at every stage in the process and in the tools that you choose, etc. I remember going into the BBC, it must have been 15 years ago, and accessibility was obviously very highly prioritized, to the extent that they were grappling with Flash-based CBeebies games that they wanted to make as accessible as possible. We've moved on now, though, haven't we, to the likes of HTML5 and much more natively delivered content.
Yep, and still trying to make them accessible. Yeah, I used to work with Ian Hamilton back when they were trying to make something special, have a really accessible game.
So would you say that going native is has been a massive jump in helping accessibility move forward, and that the tools have improved, the browsers have improved, etc.?
There are definitely still things that you have to consciously think about, even with going native. It's very easy to build it and build it not accessible. But I think you've got a lot more capability there to make it accessible. You still have to think about it. It's kind of interesting. Flash had got to a point where actually you could make it quite accessible, but you had to think about it. You had to build it in that way. And then, of course, various things put a nail in that coffin, and it's pretty much gone now from usage. But the native things, those same things that you had to think about, you still have to think about those things for the native stuff. If you're using Canvas, that's not accessible. That's as much of a black box as Flash was. So you have to think about how you create, ghost elements that can still be interacted with by people like yourself who are using screen readers, that then interact back with the thing that's visible on the canvas, so that it's still accessible.
Absolutely, yeah. And other technologies that had lots of promise, like Silverlight, didn't really stick either. But yeah, I'm really glad that a lot of it is already delivered in the browser, and that there have been great developments in making sure that those are inclusive. Because yes, you're absolutely right. The tools are one thing, and it's how you wield them that is important. So I don't think the jobs become any less simple in delivering accessible content. There's still a lot of knowledge and commitment and resources that have to be employed. But yeah, at least the tools that we're using.
Tools are definitely good. And actually, I think knowledge is possibly the real key in delivering it, is making sure that people know what they should be doing. I think the wider that knowledge can go, the earlier that people can start learning about that stuff, it then just becomes built into what they do, and it becomes natural. And they would, why would you ever build it any other way? I don't know. Absolutely. I'd love to see more of that coming back into, kind of degree level and earlier education. So that people aren't just learning it on the job.
Yeah, we did a module on accessibility in our, computer science course, and it was a, one lecture or something like that. I hear that a lot.
I do that one lecture for one of the universities, and I just think it's just not enough. It's like 3 hours, and that's all I have to tell them as much as I can about accessibility. And if that's all they get in 4 years at university, it's not enough.
Yeah, absolutely. So something that's really focused people's minds and helped unlock budgets and increase priorities is the public sector bodies, accessibility regulations, PS bar, which semi-applies to the BBC, but we've certainly seen a massive uptake in interest and activity in wanting to be compliant, wanting to be accessible to everyone, particularly in higher education, for example, and local authorities. But yeah, so how has that impacted the BBC in recent months and years?
Yeah, so it's an interesting one. The newer regulations at the EU and also in the UK that are particularly around kind of public sector spaces. So they definitely are affecting education. They're affecting councils, they're affecting government bodies, NHS, police, all that kind of organizations. And I guess anybody who's making stuff for them needs to be very aware of that. But those regulations actually don't apply to public service broadcasters. And one of the reasons that they don't is because there's other regulations that do apply. And for the BBC in particular, the charter that we have and the policies that we have already include all that stuff. So to some extent, there's an exception because our own kind of policies and charter and things are already expecting a lot more than the regulations are expecting.
Yeah, I mean, I strongly suspect that because of the shape that you are in, that, you know, there was, when it was enshrined in UK law, there wasn't the same, you know, it wasn't applicable as much to your organisation as to other, in quotes, public sector bodies. So yeah, absolutely. But have you seen an impact in, you know, third party suppliers, providers, in the general kind of discussions that are being had around accessibility?
There's definitely more conversation happening than might have been happening before. And I think there's definitely a greater expectation, you know, when we're procuring and things like that, but that definitely is. And certainly the policy that we've recently brought in is requiring that now of procurement. You know, so anything we're procuring in for staff to use, we're expecting that to be accessible for our staff. I think that kind of, that's definitely one of the things that's changed is that kind of diversity of staff is something that's getting talked about a lot more now, and about how you make your place of work more accessible to people, not just the thing that you're producing for other people to use. And that's definitely something the BBC are kind of really looking at a lot at the moment, is about how to make the place a better place for more diverse staff to work.
Yeah, we get a lot of discussions around prioritization, and people definitely prioritize customer facing or externally facing digital properties before they decide to look at their internal applications, etc. So yeah, there is a challenge there as well. We had Caroline on last month, and she, you know, definitely wants to make sure that disabled employees, the value that they bring to organizations is truly treasured, alongside a commitment to making sure that products and services to, you know, external customers are inclusive as well. So that nicely brings me on to my next question, which is around COVID. And speaking of changes in recent times, and, you know, what would you, on a personal level and as an organisation, as the BBC, do you think, you know, what has the impact been of COVID, of home working? Talking of the workplace, it's at home for a lot of us now. You know, what's the impact been for you?
Well, I'm certainly working from home 100% of the time now, instead of just some of the time. I was already very fortunate to be working in a team that were quite flexible. I can definitely vouch for the benefits of working with people who come with different lived experiences from yourself, because I do work with a number of people who have different disabilities in different ways. And I can vouch for the different points of view and the value that they bring to the work that they do and the work that we as a team do. I can definitely vouch for that. So we already had quite a flexible way of working to allow for people to, within our team, to allow for people to work in a way that worked for them. And so having everybody working from home 100% of the time has just kind of validated that, I think, that it's a perfectly okay way to work. And people are just as capable of doing their job and can be trusted to do their job from home. was quite fortunate, actually. I was working quite closely with a different team, supporting them for quite a while, and they've been really spearheading, even before the pandemic, had been really spearheading kind of working remotely and working across multiple sites. And so they'd already kind of figured out some good practice by trying things out. And they've been, that good practice that they kind of pulled together and figured out has been really beneficial for a lot of other teams across the BBC as we've moved into working from home in the pandemic. So, you know, even just little things like if some of you are all in the office and there are 2 or 3 people who are online somewhere else for a Zoom meeting, everybody just is in the Zoom meeting. They're not sitting in the office with one person on a screen. Everybody sits at their desk on their screen.
Yeah.
So they'd established things like that, you know, if you were going to be in a Zoom meeting and some people were remote, then everybody was acting like they were remote, whether they were in the office or not. So things like that were kind of good practices that they had figured out. I think for people who are disabled, just that extra flexibility. I think people have been much more willing to flex around people's home life and children and care demands and, you know, deliveries and all the kind of day-to-day things that you have to deal with when you're at home and not in the office. And the fact that we can flex around that stuff means we can also flex around disabilities, we can flex around doctor appointments, we can flex around I'm not feeling so great today. There's a lot more awareness of mental health and the way that that's impacting in things. And of course, with disability, quite often comes mental health challenges as well, because quite often you're in pain or you're frustrated or you're just having a brain fog day, you know. And I think there's just a lot more flexibility around that stuff that people are more appreciative of because of the pandemic and the different situations that people have had to work in. That greater flexibility is a big benefit coming from that.
And is there an expectation within the BBC that those options will continue, that flexibility will remain?
Definitely, and not just within the BBC. I've talked with different people in different companies and people that I know elsewhere, and those same expectations are coming elsewhere as well, not just at the BBC. Obviously, for the BBC, there are some people who do jobs that can't flex in quite that way, you know, because they're the people making sure that the stuff gets broadcast at a particular time and that kind of thing. But then the rest of us are working from home to make sure that they can do their job that requires them to be at a particular place at a particular time. So, but yes, I think a lot of companies who are doing office-based work are going to have workforces that in future are doing a large amount of that work from home and being very flexible around that.
Yeah, Microsoft, I think last week started a soft return to work. They anticipate by the end of the year they'll have 40% of staff back at work. Obviously, it's a slightly different situation over there with regards to COVID, but yeah, I mean, it's a ghost town at the moment, apparently. Nobody has taken them up on that option, but there definitely will be people that are feeling the lack of support, you know, if you have a particular impairment maybe, or, you know, need for social interaction and that sort of thing. So yeah, IRL is going to be important for a lot of people going forward as well.
Yeah, definitely. It is challenging because I think it throws up a whole bunch of things that people wouldn't normally think about as being impairment or disability as well. I think the pandemic's done that as well, but it's also, I think, underlined that actually the things that would benefit people who have disabilities actually really benefit a whole bunch of other people as well for different reasons, you know. And if you put that flexibility in, it benefits everybody. It's like improving paternity leave, you know, just actually made that flex a whole lot better for everybody. I know so many people where the mother and the father have shared those first few months, so that the mother wasn't being out of work for such a long period of time and the father had more time at home with his child, you know. So they, you know, they would maybe flex the time, so they were doing a few days each, that kind of thing, or a week on, week off type of arrangement. I've known parents to do that. And those same flexibilities that allow people to work from home or work from the office or work, you know, from the doctor's surgery, whatever it is that they need to do, those same kind of flexibilities benefit a lot more people.
Are you aware of
and prove that point that we can still work in that way?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's always been, I think, a more mature approach to, you know, catering for people's needs, because that's how you get the best out of people if you let them perform at their best by, accommodating reasonable small adjustments in most cases. So yeah, has the Beeb adopted any new technologies as a result of home working, and are you aware of how they would mandate accessibility in the choices that they made there?
I know that when they first kind of flipped over to the home working, the kind of IT support department had a huge job on their hands to help everybody get up to speed to be able to work from home. They had some things that were already coming into place, but those have had to speed up because of the pandemic. So things that were already kind of planned for had to happen a lot faster. So we have better ways of connecting into the kind of work network from home than we did before. We're using things like Zoom regularly, which we were using already, and messaging systems and that kind of thing. So yes, a little bit, but I think most of them were already planned already, because we were. The BBC isn't just, as you'll be aware, but not everybody is aware, the BBC is not just in one place. The BBC is in lots of different places. And I know myself that, I, for a long time as part of my work, have supported our Champions Network. And I have visited people in Bristol, in Cardiff, in Belfast, in Scotland, in Birmingham, in London, as well as in Salford, where I'm based. And they're just our kind of main centers. I've even had a conversation with someone in Africa, so who became a champion, from one of our Africa offices. And, we have, partly because of BBC News, the BBC has a lot of different offices all over the country, and around the world. And so that kind of remote working was already a little bit of what we did already. I think it just ramped up a little bit.
Absolutely, yeah. So we talked a little bit earlier about new technologies. I have to ask you about Chrome and the auto captions that are now available on any video that you play. That's obviously going to have an impact within the BBC, or that you have an opinion on it. What are you thinking about advancements like this, which have potentially great benefits but also some downsides as well, and what other emerging technologies are you seeing around the corner or are particularly excited about?
It's interesting, the auto captions and that kind of speech to text translation, it does offer up kind of value perhaps where it hasn't been before. So to be able to have live transcription within a Zoom setting, for instance, is absolutely brilliant, without having to employ a captioner. Judith, you're doing an absolutely brilliant job, I'm sure. But it means that in your kind of day-to-day work meetings where you're not necessarily going to pay out for somebody to come and do the captioning, which will be a lot better, but it just means that where you wouldn't have had that accessibility before, you've got something that's getting you partway there. And actually, it is really quite impressive these days what it can do. It's never going to be 100% accurate. It's not going to be great with accents like mine. It's not going to be great if there are multiple overlaid voices. It will struggle. If there's background sounds, it will struggle. But it's a bit better than nothing. Not always brilliant, but it's a bit better than nothing. And I think it's definitely an interesting area in seeing where it's coming. I'm aware that our professional subtitlers are already and have been using that kind of technology for quite some time, just to help out where it can. It does have to be reasonably good to be worth using. I've done a little bit of subtitling myself, and if it doesn't do it well, it actually takes longer to do the corrections than just to do the subtitles yourself. So it's not 100% there yet, but it is definitely better than nothing. Then there are definitely some interesting technologies around the corner. We've been paying attention to voiced technologies, the conversational devices and chatbots and talking technologies. That's a really interesting area, definitely a platform that is accelerating very fast. So being able to talk to whatever technology while you're driving down the road, to take phone calls or send messages or change directions on your map, that kind of thing, without having to use your hands, to just do it conversationally. That kind of thing is really powerful for people who struggle to read or maybe don't have sight. I'm aware of your other podcast.
You mean
it's great technology, right?
The daily podcast all about the
Yeah.
Echo. I'm not going to say her name.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the BBC has a brilliant presence on the Echo, the A-Lady. Yeah.
We're paying attention to that technology, but we're also paying attention to where the barriers are. What are the things that are making that actually more difficult than it should be?
Yep.
I'm aware for quite a while that actually signing on to the app wasn't the most accessible experience. Even though once you got in there, it was good. Yep. Actually getting there was hard. Mm-hmm. So little things like that, where are the barriers? And my colleague Jamie's been doing some great work looking at VR and virtual reality and augmented reality, and having a look at where the barriers are with that. What are the things that people need to be thinking about? We're not coming up with the solutions, but we're quite happy to kind of have that research piece that he's done and share that out with other people around the barriers. But it's really interesting. It's great that disabled people, virtual reality, augmented reality can take people with physical disabilities somewhere where they couldn't go otherwise.
Absolutely. I would love for us to talk some more about that, but maybe we could put that link in the show notes.
I think so.
So we've got a couple of minutes left. Just to finish off then, we always finish off by asking you the question that was put by the previous speaker. And Caroline Casey of the Valuable 500 is all about, getting disability recognised as part of the diversity festival that's going on at the moment, which is fantastic. So the Beeb, she says, what plans do you have to better integrate the representation of disabled people both in front of and behind the camera? I don't know if you are in a position to answer that, but
well, I'm aware of some things that the BBC are doing, and they're doing some fantastic work. So is Caroline, for that matter. The Valuable 500 is an awesome project. I've been following what she's been doing for a couple of years now, and it's really exciting. But yeah, the BBC, I guess last year started a kind of a creativity and diversity and inclusion, diversity and inclusion strategy. And they brought on June Sarpong as a kind of a head of diversity and inclusion. And she's just been making great strides and doing some fantastic work. So there's a whole kind of creative diversity strategy. There's some budget commitments, not only for what's happening in front of the camera, in other words, the things that the audience watch or listen to, but also that budget is impacting on who's behind the scenes, who's producing it, who's writing it, who's working on it as the camera person or the recording artists, that kind of thing. So there is commitment on both sides of the camera, so to speak. And they're putting together great events that I think CDX was a conference that they did last year. And also we have a kind of a head of disability in terms of staffing, who's been doing some great kind of reframing disability strategy work that includes things like passports. They're called passports, disability passports, that are kind of what you need in terms of adjustments so that it's easier for you to move team. And if you're working in production,
every single time, yep.
Yeah, if you're working in production, that could be every 3 months. So it's just a thing that can follow you around, that lets a new manager know what adjustments you need and how to go about doing that, and get them in touch with the right people to make those adjustments possible. So there's some great things happening in both directions. So the BBC are definitely accelerating in that area at the moment.
Always have been, in the van, definitely. So final question or comment to pass on to next month's guests. So we actually have 2 guests next month. We have Jennison Asuncion and Joe Devon. They're the co-founders of GAAD, G-A-A-D, the Global Accessibility Awareness Day that will be next month. So what would you like to pass on to them?
First up, well done, guys. It's an absolutely fantastic movement. We've benefited so much from it the last few years, and look forward to doing so again. But I'd love to know what their thoughts around are, how they're feeling about kind of conferences. The past year, all of that has happened online, and how do they feel that that's going to impact on things going forward? Will things stay online? Will they go hybrid? How do they think that's going to work? It's kind of an interesting thing, because a lot of the GAAP stuff, the global awareness stuff, has happened online, not only in person. So I think they have quite a good, unique point of view on that one.
Wow, brilliant question. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's a hot topic. I'm going to pass back to Annie after saying thank you so much, Emma. Brilliant. We could have talked for another half an hour. What a shame. Thank you so much. Back to Annie.
Cheers.
So thank you so much, Emma and Robin. We've had loads of questions come through, which we hope to answer online in the next few days, and you'll receive an email with a link to access the answers. Finally, just a bit more information that might be of interest for you. We also run online training sessions on digital accessibility, and you can find out more at abilitynet.org.uk/training. And you can use an exclusive 10% off discount code, which is available to registrants of our webinars, which is AbilityNet webinar 1010. And training courses are available for various roles, including coming up later on this week, backed by popular demand. On Thursday, the 8th of April, we have how to create accessible documents and presentations. And then on the 14th of April, PDF accessibility. Then on the 22nd and the 29th of April, we have our 2 accessibility for developers courses. And then you can also sign up for our newsletter for the latest announcements about digital accessibility, visit our YouTube channel, download our podcast, and we also have a suite of accessibility services to suit all types of organisations. And then finally, just don't forget about our next webinars, which are available at abilitynet.org.uk/webinars. We have our latest higher education and public sector update next Tuesday, the 13th of April, when we're joined by the University of Derby to talk about promoting accessibility to staff. And then on the 4th of May, as Robin mentioned, we have our next Accessibility Insights session, focusing on Global Accessibility Awareness Day. So that's it from me. So thank you, Emma, again, and Robin, and everyone that's joined us. And do please complete the feedback form that you'll be directed to at the end of the webinar, and we'll be in touch with you soon. Bye, everyone.